Yo, let's get it. Today we're going to be doing the perfect handstand. I'm talking straight line handstand. In this video, you're going to get all the tools necessary to master a perfect handstand. I'm talking drills, workout plan. I'm going to be with you every step of the way. Whether you're a regular gym goer or a training competitive gymnast, this video is going to give you everything you need. And as a bonus, if you're currently working on handstand, we're going to fix your banana back. No more arching for you. I've broken down the handstand into 4 easy to digest steps. Number 1, you need to build up your shoulder strength to hold the position. Number 2, you need shoulder flexibility. 3, we need mobility, which is strength in a flexible position. You need mobility for your shoulders and hips. And lastly, you need to be able to balance the position, which is the fun part of the training. Once you've mastered these 4 steps, not only will you be able to do your handstand, but also be able to use it in your gymnastic skills. And as a regular gym person, you'll be ready to soak up all that juicy street cred with your gorgeous straight line handstand that you've built. Now, it will take a lot of time and effort, but contrary to popular belief, you don't actually need to be super strong to do this style of handstand, although it will take a lot of practice and repetition because the balance is pretty tricky. Warning! Make sure you warm up properly before every workout, and yes, I mean every handstand workout. The wrists are extremely vulnerable when we train handstands consistently, so make sure there's plenty of blood in your wrist, forearm, and flexors. Make sure to do the flexor curls that you see here in this video. Go ahead and steal this warm up if you need, and let's move on. First thing we must understand is the muscles that are involved in the gymnastics handstand that allow us to be in the correct position to perform the movement. We need to elevate our shoulders as tall as possible using our upper trapezius. Once our shoulders are elevated, then we're able to hold our weight by applying force with the anterior head of the shoulder. You'll notice that all pro gymnasts use this style of handstand. It makes them look stretched as tall and as long as possible so they can be as efficient as possible during their routines. Now let's dive into the lesson, starting off with building our shoulder strength. This step is pretty straightforward. Start off by choosing an exercise to help build your shoulder pressing strength. I recommend overhead press as this targets the muscles used in the handstand directly. Remember, you don't need to be super strong to perform the handstand, but it's better to have too much strength than it is to have too little. If you don't have access to a gym, my next recommendation would be to learn the V push-up. We have a tutorial on how to do this type of push-up, and I'll leave it in the description for you guys to check it out. This is a great way for you guys to build strength while learning an exercise that helps with handstand specificity. Add one of these exercises to your program at least once per week to make progress as smooth as possible. Moving on to the most underrated part of the lesson, shoulder flexibility. In order to perform this skill properly, you'll need to open your shoulders completely while elevating your shoulders as tall as possible. You won't be able to perform the skill in this way if your shoulders are unable to open in general. Start with your hands on a box or couch and place your hands about shoulder width apart. From here, press your armpits down until they're lower than your hands. While stretching your shoulders, try to maintain core engagement by pulling your ribs in. If you pull your ribs in, you might notice that your shoulders have trouble staying down. This will give you a better stretch over time, and eventually you want to get to the point where you have a straight line or better than a straight line to move on to the next step. Stretch out like this 3 times per week for 2 minutes per day. Okay, moving on to the mobility part of the lesson. This is where you're going to spend most of the time in your workouts, seeing how this is going to be the most important part of your training. All we're going to do is take the flexibility exercise we learned in the last unit and add weight to that position. Open shoulders, ribs in, eventually adding the hips as well. Practicing by starting on the floor is a great way to master the mobility needed for this exercise. Push your hands as far away as possible, open your shoulders, get your ribs in, get your hips flat, and lift your heels slightly in the air by about 1 inch or so. Practice this all the time until the movement becomes second nature to you when you lay on the floor. Now it's time to challenge ourselves with a thin resistance band. Try to get into the same position you had on the floor, but while holding the band up above you. Get your armpits open, ribs in, and hips flat during this exercise. Once passing this exercise, we can finally move on to trying out our first few handstands. It's going to start off in a tuck like this, and don't worry, it's perfectly fine if your shoulders are a little rounded at first. Over time, you'll be able to open them up and elevate your hips over your shoulders. Try to maintain the same position we were in during the flexibility section. At first, this position will feel extremely tiring, but trust that you'll get used to it over time. While holding this progression, look at your hands as it'll help you balance once we get to that in the next section. Once you can hold this shape for 20 seconds, try lifting one leg so your hips can get involved in the movement as well. It'll make it harder for you to maintain the same position you had during the pike handstand. Get used to this position for a few days, Then try challenging yourself by trying the same progression flat against the wall. Does this position look familiar? Well, it should, because we spent so much time practicing this on the floor already. The only difference is now we have to hold ourselves up using our shoulder strength rather than just laying flat on the ground. If you've got the hang of this handstand, try the same one but with flexed feet on the wall so that the only thing touching the wall is your feet. Try to maintain the same posture we've been doing this whole time. Open shoulders, ribs in, hips flat. Alright, that finishes everything off for mobility. Now we get to move on to the really fun stuff. You guys are really close to holding a handstand at this point. By the way, if you managed to watch this far into the video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Alright, let's get on to it. Before we can learn any cool balancing tips and tricks, we have to learn how to fall down. Handstands in general are pretty scary to the average person. Learning how to fall is going to accelerate your progress at this stage. To fall safely, start by moving your dominant hand forward in front of your body. This will create an empty space where your dominant hand used to be. Place the same side leg into that space as you step down. In this example, right hand steps forward, right foot steps down. Practice this step tons of times against the wall before trying to attempt it freestanding. Now we can move on to learn our first balancing drill, keeping in mind to step down the same way we learned in the previous drill. Start in the flex feet handstand drill, then begin moving your heels slightly behind your head. As your heels move behind you, you'll notice that the weight starts to shift onto your knuckles. It's important to feel exactly where your weight is in relation to your hand. Focus on your hands as much as possible, keeping in mind that when you feel your weight over your knuckles, that's when you're in freestanding balance. If your weight is on your palms or on your fingertips, you're likely falling back towards your hands or falling forward where you will need to kick down the same way we taught earlier. The last portion of this lesson will be gymnastics specific, where we learn the kick up to handstand, which is the gymnastics entry into the handstand. We made a video on different types of entries into the handstand that you can watch by clicking on the link in the description down below. Start the kick up by stretching your body as long and as tall as possible. Try to maintain the same posture we've had this entire lesson. Now lunge your dominant leg forward while maintaining the same stretch we had earlier. From here, we will enter what's known as the lever. This is a crucial part of the gymnastics entry that needs to be met if you're going to keep tension throughout the entire kick up. There should be a slight arch in the back while maintaining the stretch that we had earlier. From here, push off your front leg and kick your back leg up to complete the kick up. Practice this 10 million times until you're able to do it somewhat consistently. Eventually, you'll be able to find your handstand line at the end of the kick up. It takes a long time and a lot of practice, so do it as often as you can, as often as your wrist will allow. If you ever feel like you're falling forward, make sure to use the same step down that we learned earlier. What can I say? You're probably a stud by now if you made it this far. Time to do our handstand recap and go over the workout program. Do a general strength training exercise once per week, like overhead press or V push-up. Do your shoulder stretch exercise 3 times per week for 2 minutes per day. It's important to be able to make a straight line with your shoulders before moving on. And finally, get practicing. Do your mobility work 3 to 5 times per week and practice your kick up 10 million times. Go ahead and feel free to copy this workout exactly, and good luck to you on your handstand journey. This is Coach Lawrence signing off. Peace.